again to Stein for his wonderful leadership.
Well, it's leadership. I wouldn't exactly call it wonderful. That's a good segue, though. Thank you, Marlene. Into my last opening thought for today, and that is we have been saying since April that this is a learning process, and moving around data and trying to get to a place where we can begin to make decisions. I think it's fair to tell you that we're pretty close to that next level. It may or may not happen tonight, but very soon we are going to be making some specific decisions about areas. Again, nothing is written in stone that can't be changed or moved, but I'm going to ask our committee to aggressively try to get to a point where we are making some decisions. And that's where the rubber is going to hit the road amongst ourselves as well as with the public. And we are prepared, I think, through all our work to be able to make the best decisions that we can. We recognize that we're probably not going to make 100% of Fayette Countyans happy with some of our decisions, but our hope is that the overwhelming majority of the families and parents of those 41,000+ students whom we steward so importantly will appreciate the efforts and final results of this work. But we're about to start getting there. And having said that, I want to remind all, mostly the committee, the public as well, is that each of us was chosen and approved and selected by the school board. In other words, we serve at their pleasure, and frankly, we also are bound to serve as best we can to achieve the goals that they had in mind for us. And amongst those things are the guiding principles that we were asked to share, to follow through this process. And I think it's fair to say that we've tried to do that, though we may have, in fact, even added some of our own that the school board did not anticipate. So I think at some point I've asked the committee to kind of revisit what some of those original guiding principles were. And I think, Jim Duncan, you wanted to say a few words in that regard.
Thank you, Alan. In looking at the Lex Talk comments that we've been receiving, and certainly hearing what we've been going over for the past few weeks with this, it just appeared that we were making our task even more Herculean than it already is, especially when we were trying to do some of these things that perhaps are not called for in the guiding principles. And I went back and looked through those, and I'm sure you all have too, and that there are several that stand out as ones that we should be following, that we're tasked to follow, and they're also, in some instances, they're conflicting. The balancing the socioeconomic with keeping neighborhood schools, that's going to be a very tall order for us. But I think it's one that we have been trying to achieve through this process. The neighborhood schools we get closer to that as we try to eliminate these discontinuous assignment areas. The socioeconomic, I think we've talked about coming back and visiting that once we get this done, and doing some more strategic surgery around the edges to see how we can fix this. But other issues such as disruption of households and students, those aren't listed in our guiding principles. And there's nothing in there that compels us to move a minimum number of students or to only address populating the new school. And I believe that the board was deliberate in the way they wrote their guiding principles. And unless the board has changed their charge for us or modifies those, I think that we do ourselves a favor by following those principles, not adding more to them. Because I believe, Alan, that we've got enough to do if we can just stick with these and get the the new school assignments and the changes we need by following these principles.
Any other committee members want to dive into that conversation? Ron?
I will just note that it's something that's come up in a lot of the comments we've received, and I've avoided saying much about it to this point, but property values and adult issues are not in those guiding principles. This is about kids, the 41,000 kids that we have to do our best for. So my 2 cents.
Al, I think it also might be worth pointing out again, since there are other groups of people that are paying more attention now than previously when we were discussing the guiding principles, as Dr. Shelton explained a number of times, the guiding principles were not listed in any type of priority order. And sometimes when you look at a bulleted list, you assume bullet number 1 merits the highest priority, and that's not necessarily the intent of the school board. So as we pass the guiding principles around again, if that's the intent, I think it's worth repeating that they're not in any particular order, as I understand it.
They are in, I've asked to have them in your packets as a refresher. I hope everybody got that. Lisa, thank you for that. Anyone else before we move forward? Do either of our school board members want to chime in?
Keep going as charged.
Okay. Well, I trust that either of you might, if we do get too far afield from what your original intent for us was, that you'll throw something at me. Well, something soft. Okay, let's move ahead then. Where we left ourselves was in a position of having, based mostly upon capacity of our schools, we got to a point where we had most of our boundaries drawn. Oh, we need to approve the minutes. Why? Okay. Oh, it's not my job. Yeah. All right, you have your minutes. They're in front of you. Take a look. Let me know.
Move to approve.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait. We've got to change that.
I know I sent a revision to Debbie to one sentence in there. I don't know if anybody else did.
I did, but it's already been changed.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you're right.
Just a clarification that those discontiguous areas are not all because of socioeconomics.
Okay.
Some are.
That's good. Yeah, that needs to be changed. Anyone else? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Now, where we left off was with what we thought was coming to be a pretty close plan, but we recognized that we still had and some areas weren't satisfied with. Indeed. Scott, you're on now, I assume?
I am on.
Thank you. We asked, in fact, for 2 different scenarios. One that kept some of the students in the area of town who were attending Rosa Parks pretty much to remain as they are, and there was a second one that recommended that we might split a couple of those areas to further accommodate and reduce the overcrowding situation at Rosa Parks, most specifically moving some of those students to Stonewall, not all, but some. So that's
Correct.
where we were. Scott, you with us?
I am here.
Everyone could have those scenarios in front of you. Let's open the floor for conversation.
Can I ask a question about the third draft that says draft BDP 7,600 students will change, and then comparing that to the drafts that are on top, scenario A and B, 2,700 and 2,500. The scenario that we worked on last week, this one that's on top, that is only moving 2,500 students versus the packet 7,500 students. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
I think it's important to note, because I even put it on there, that of those 2,500 or 2,700 students, there's 900 plus that are actually going to be going to a new school, one of the brand new schools. So it's really, you've got to take that into account, that there are going to be a good amount of students, probably close to 800 to 1,000, that are always going to be moved because they're going to be assigned to one of the new schools.
That's at the elementary level, and
right.
Then as deliberations move forward, Scott, I'm assuming that number is going to be 1,200 or 1,300 for the high school. So whatever the total change number ends up being, it could be as many as 2,800, 2,900 of those students, if we went to full capacity in all our new schools, who are going to be changed no matter what. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Did that answer your question? You okay?
Alan, looking at this projection for Rosa Parks, we're talking about in projection B of not moving the people in Palomar, or the students in Palomar, out of Rosa Parks, but leaving them in Rosa Parks, which has a projection of 123% capacity. That's only a few points off of several other elementaries that we're not having concerns with. We're showing Cassidy Elementary at 114%. Sandersville at 107%, which is a major growth area. Of these resident students, that area out there, I don't think is anticipated or slotted for any future growth at this point in time. I think they're really surrounded. There's not even a lot of growth going on in that area. Of the resident students out there, what would really help us is to have some projected numbers so that we really know what the projected numbers are for the future for that area.
Scott, did you hear the question? You may not have been on the line when we talked earlier about getting our projected numbers that we had anticipated we'd already have.
Yes, I did hear that. And first of all, I want to just say Bob did explain the reasoning behind the numbers of enrollment versus residents. That's something we have to keep in mind. I should say it more often because I like to say it. And then the projected numbers, I believe today we'll finally get the last piece of data that we need from the district to be able to put that together. I'm anticipating then at the 20th meeting to have the projections available, and we can work on projections. I won't have a chance. I won't be able to do it at the next meeting, but the meeting a week from today, I should have the projections available where we can start looking at things for that.
But I want to make sure that we're not going to be spinning our wheels here for this meeting and the next one, and then have our projections come in. If they're dramatically different, we may have to retread a lot of work.
And I understand that.
And we could all home and get a cocktail right now. Come back in a week. Somebody would shoot me.
No, we wouldn't.
Alan, does Scott have the numbers for that particular area?
I have the current resident students, but I don't have projected numbers for that area, no.
Do we have any reason to think, Scott, Bob, Mary, that there's going to be a wholesale significant change when we get those projections from what we're working with?
From what I can tell and the information I get, the only changes is going to be, not the only changes, but the majority of the changes would be to the eastern portion of the district where there's still development going on. We're still working on that, getting that nailed down, and that's what the last piece of the puzzle is, the exact phasing for the development. But
to answer Rick's query, the area that this study area that we're looking at right now is likely to be less or significantly less changed. Right?
That's overall change.
Yeah.
Not necessarily decline.
So then, we can have some comfort in moving forward if we're trying to figure out what we're going to do down there. So that, without waiting. Okay. I'm looking around and seeing some heads nod.
I'm just, your comment, not necessarily about the cocktail, but are we spinning our wheels here? I mean,
Don't ever dismiss my cocktail.
no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. Why it's got some nut. But I'm just wondering if this is a productive process to sit here for 2 more meetings then and do this when we could have some significant change, at least in the eastern part, which is going to trickle back to other areas. I'm happy to sit here, but what are we
Well,
going
I don't know what our alternative is, frankly. We need to keep a foot on the pedal, and but I still want to get to a point where we've got some idea of what the pleasure of this committee is, particularly. Let's just take think about these 2 scenarios that are before us. And if we move forward as we have all along the way and anticipate that, as we just said, this particular area of town is unlikely to be dramatically changed from the projections, although Ron's point about everything impacting everything is valid. If we could move forward there and get a feel for what this committee would like to do, then we can start to look at those other guiding principles through the prism of those other principles with what work we've done.
Alan, I'd like to suggest we move forward to scenario B.
I would as well, because if we put those kids back in Rosa Parks, then that leaves room in Stonewall, and Wellington has a little bit of room as well, so we can stop busing the kids on the other side of Man of War and get them to schools that are a little bit closer. We may have to move some attendance lines back in order for them to be at capacity, but it would allow more wiggle room in closer schools for those kids.
I agree.
I agree too.
I'd like to get a consensus on that, and if we have one, we can move forward. What's the other side of the argument? Anybody disagree with moving forward with B? Great. Good deal, Bob. Scott, we're going to use scenario B in our conversations here.
okay.
If we can help us with that. I would then suggest to you that we have a preliminary map of what the elementary districts might look like before I move on from that. Anybody? Got any comments about what it looks like? Are there other areas that we need to look at and tweak?
I think we need to tweak the areas that are on the south side of Man of War, the non-contiguous areas, because now there's room in Stonewall and there's a little bit of room in Wellington, so we can fill those up and then shuffle if we need to keep things full.
Well, this, scenario B gets us at, looking it up, Stonewall is down to 78%, so we've got room there.
what I was trying to do last week and led us to the two scenario solution.
Yeah. Well, we've had a few days to think about it. Okay. Aaron, let's take a look at those areas. Scott, did you follow that?
Do we know how many students are in there in the playground?
The 591, 592, 593, how many students are in there to add to Wellington?
Okay. Yeah, and that would be my suggestion if we do have some room in these guys, is maybe try to get rid of some of these non-contiguous areas.
And Scott, a quick question.
That's why I've got my hair growing.
Scott, on the map you're showing right now, there are sort of darker purple areas. Are those the planned developments, just to clarify?
Yeah, I actually did put those up there as we were talking about that. Like this is in 535. That is an area of development.
Thank you.
So these 4 study areas down here has 145 students in them. So bringing those to Wellington will bring Wellington to 750.
Nicholasville Road, you mentioned for development is going to be a new shopping center.
But as I'm looking these here, if you look at these two neighborhoods, these neighborhoods flow nicely into Wellington, where these neighborhoods don't as much. Let's see what happens if I just look at those two. So there's 123 within these two neighborhoods. And that brings Wellington up to 728, which is a 12% over.
Looking at Wellington another way, they have space for about 45 kids. 650 versus 605.
Before the move.
Before the move.
Yeah, before the move. So if one of those two, if 593 has 50 kids, that would get it right.
How many kids are in 593 and 592? Oh.
Then you get into an area where you're really splitting up one side of the neighborhood on one side of the street, the other side of the street. There's probably areas up close to Stonewall that might better fit if you think one further up, the legal pressure possibly.
Where do you think they are, Ty? Can you see on there?
I'm sorry, was that a question for me?
Yes.
592, there's 88 students, and 593, there's 35.
93 and 2.
If we're comfortable leaving Rosa Parks over, I mean, can't we put Wellington a little
We could. Listen, we can do whatever we want to do. But, you know, I don't want to get too much anarchy here.
Why aren't we moving first with the Firebrook Copperfield area going, getting them taken care of and working our way east? Since we're locked on the west side, why don't we start on the west side to the east? Figure out how many of the kids that are currently being sent to Garden Springs we can get into Stonewall, and then move over and see now how many can we get to Wellington.
That's logical.
I'm just, why is that discontiguous area more important to move than the other one? It's going to Picadome, which is farther away.
My point is, the Firebrook area is the westernmost point, and we know that we're not going to put them in Rosa Parks because they're full.
Right.
So where's the next logical place they would go is Stonewall. So let's start there and work our way east.
We could also put some of these from Stonewall into Wellington to relieve some of Stonewall and bring more of these into Stonewall, if that's making any sense.
Makes good sense.
Yeah.
So if I move these 3 study areas into Wellington, that brings Wellington almost to 100%, and it leaves almost 200 spaces for Stonewall. And now we could decide where we want to look at that. And it does seem these are the 3 study areas I moved, and they do seem like they're contiguous neighborhoods. So we're not splitting anything up here, it appears to me. So where do you want to start with trying to get this areas into Stonewall? Do you want to start over here? You want to take this whole and maybe Clay Mills one also?
How many good enough?
I would still like to see the other part first, and I thought that we had agreement on that.
Yeah, me too.
Scott, do you understand the leftmost portion of the purple area?
Garden Springs or Wellington?
571, 576.
Right.
Okay.
You're in Garden Springs.
Right. And where would you like those to go?
Stonewall.
There's a total of 67 students in those 2 study areas, and I can move them to Stonewall.
Is that more knowledge? Here's the point. We've got some kids from right here going that direction. And with this, we've got other kids going Stonewall and then crisscrossing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is contiguous.
There's still 100 years.
We still got room for 100 kids at Stonewall.
That's my question, is why would we move this area when you've got areas that could be contiguous with Stonewall? This area is...
Yeah, we're not done yet. He's right. We're doing kind of one step at a time here to see what the impacts are.
About 572, 577, we're heading that direction.
Did I hear somebody... Did you guys want 572, 577? Is that what I heard?
We're splitting in neighborhoods if we do that type.
Are 577 and 578 neighborhoods?
That's Dogwood Trace area, so you probably have to go 72, 77, 78. I think you probably most of it.
And you're proposing to Stonewall?
Well, we still got 20% capacity. If we're trying to work that direction, we got to go somewhere. I mean, it may not work, but it's the neighborhood.
Can't split it.
Let's just try it. Then yeah, try it. At least we know it works.
Yeah, we don't want to split. 577 and 578, it wouldn't make sense to split those. Okay. I want to keep those intact.
The other thing to be mindful of is what we're doing to Garden Springs here. I know we're not done yet, but where are we going to pull students from those surrounding areas to populate Garden Springs? We're down to 55% right now, and we're talking about pulling more out of there.
Yeah, Ron, I was about to make that point as well. going to start dominoing, moving some other areas where we're pulling kids. So I think the idea should be to move all of the kids that are in this non-contiguous area all at once. Let's just get it done, and then that way we can start moving kids from other areas in that district to balance that out, to try to equalize the populations in those schools. For all schools that are impacted, because we're going to look at Picadome as well.
Or you say move along the Stonewall and they go from there?
Yeah.
I was already asked, so we wouldn't put the people in the Garden Street. And why are we putting people out in Garden Street?
Well,
should we try? I was, why were those people, was that a socioeconomic reason for putting those people in Garden Springs?
No, out in this area it was primarily just space.
Just space?
Because as we were noticing at the last meeting, there were, the blue area to Picadome had 250 to 300 students, if I recall. The green area to Clays Mill has 100. And then the purple area to Garden Springs has about 250 to 300 total, something like that. And I was just thinking and making a comment here that if somebody's going to go to Garden Springs, it should probably be the westernmost part of that area because it's Garden Springs.
Mm-hmm.
And then if somebody's going to go to Stonewall, it would be somewhere in the middle. And if somebody's going to be to Picadome, it's somewhere in the middle or the eastern end.
Rather?
Suggesting what we just moved from Garden Springs to Stonewall, we should put those back in Garden Springs and look more at the area to the east of 6 Harrisburg Road.
Yeah.
I think so too.
And they are contiguous to Stonewall.
Yes.
I agree.
I think that, and we may be on the right track here, but I don't want to take our eyes off Picadome. I can't imagine any scenario that can be justified that you would drive by 3 elementary schools to get to your elementary school. I agree. I believe that is a transportation alternative that we would prefer. So the Picadome on the county line, we need to get that closer to a school closer than Picadome.
Mm-hmm. I think we should start by putting.
What about Claysville?
Yep. Yeah, well,
We've got 180.
We have space on us 100.
Can we agree to move that Picadome area up to Stonewall for the time being? The
entire area for now.
From 593 all the way over to 582, 89. Is that what you're looking at?
And you're in that area.
We're going to have to go shift the other area too, but just for the time being. Like.
And just as a sort of a reminder that Scott did some of this work, on the computer, and you have those maps, so just referencing that and looking at how that was done might help us a little bit as far as where we're moving in the future, as far as if we're trying to get rid of those non-contiguous areas, particularly Picadome with their long drive up Blaze Mill. Here, it's an immediate, it looks like Southern's boundary moved further west to alleviate some space for Wellington, which, so just something to maybe take a look at as we're moving these.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I had to bring all of these schools up here pretty far southwest to be able to accompany and accomplish getting all of these non-contiguous out of here. Now, I think we might be able to, that was getting all 3 non-contiguous areas out. We might be able to accommodate just getting one of them, like the Picadome or Clays Mill. Or we could consolidate, and as we're taking from Garden Springs, we can maybe put another area to one of the other ones, or You know what I'm saying? Instead of getting just 3 different schools down there, we might be able to bring it down to 2 or 1 school if we can't get rid of the non-contiguous completely. But it sounds like Picadome is the one that seems to be the one that we want to move the most.
I mean, do we give up our Davis idea just working from west to east?
Well, we haven't given up on any ideas.
That's where we're working, then we just kind of stop.
So what are you saying? What areas where?
As many solving that as we could, and then go back and address the areas that was impacted.
572, 577, the stone wall. 578.
578.
578, the stone wall.
David,
Yeah,
we want to start in the west, right? And that's what we're
well, I
starting
wanted to start with, let's take all of these kids
Right.
and get them to their closest school, and then assuming there would have to
Let's
be some
just start there and see what happens, and then
tweaking after that. But I hate to go into it with the assumption that some kids are going to have to go to Garden Springs. I don't think that that's necessarily a given at this point.
No. Scott, is it possible, can you take the map that we have right in front of us, and then can you ask your software to give us a closest to the school analysis for specific study areas?
No, I really can't do that, not for specific study areas.
Yeah. That's worth it.
You got them there, just
Yeah.
all right, so we just try moving those 3 that he's got highlighted and Stonewall just to see what happens.
I'm sorry, what was that?
572, 577, 578, the ones you have highlighted. We move those to Stonewall just to see what it does.
Right here.
That's what the numbers show on the table.
Okay.
23 would be in Stonewall at that point in time.
The other one.
All right, what about the other one?
And Garden Springs is down to 360.
Okay for now.
I agree with Jim's point, though. The most troublesome, in my opinion, discontiguous area is these folks way out here going to pick something about it.
I think we're trying to get there. We're just going.
I do too. I think we're trying to get
Well,
there.
before-
We keep stopping every
Before
time
we fill up Stonewall with all these folks over here more west. And Wellington is now full.
Would it not make more sense to leave the Firebrook people, Firebrook in Stonewall for the time being and move Spring to Picadome Street?
That would be something I'd like to see.
That's closer.
Yes, but really the only way that makes sense to do that is if you're assuming that those kids, you're going to leave those kids at Garden Springs. And I didn't know that we were doing that. I tried to address all of these non-contiguous
Why don't we
areas.
undo what we did there on the west side and try to see what the Picadome, moving the Picadome to Stonewall, just to see what it looks like. Let's just try it.
That's fine.
Yeah. And then we can always split it or do something with it. So,
Undo what you did and try to pick it up.
Did we just lose?
Section just
we've been hacked again.
Everyone can pick you up.
Say back what you had. 18 is not.
Is that go back, see, put those back to Garden Springs we just took out and go try the one Picadome?
I think he's going to try to, so he got disconnected.
All right, I'm back.
Can we try to just basically undo the last moves we made on the west side of the 576, 71, that area, put it back where it was, and then try to move the Picadome, the whole area there, into Stonewall, just to see what kind of scenario that creates us.
All the way from 593 to 589.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty, but number-wise.
Okay, so this is back to the way it was originally, and now you want to move all of these into Stonewall.
Right. So,
Wasn't nearly as bad as I expected.
no, I thought it was going to be worse than that.
10 or 11%. Not bad.
Shoot, that's not bad.
On the 591 through 593, is that Boston Road that kind of divides 590 and 591?
Yeah, I think so,
It would make sense to move those who are, on the right side there at Boston Road, put them in Wellington, and then maybe move those Place Mill people into Stonewall.
We filled Wellington by that move that someone else suggested north of Manawar.
Yeah, I think though that if we move those kids into Wellington, like you were saying, we could then maybe take some from the top, like he had done in his earlier scenario, and that way you're pulling some of those kids out of Wellington to make room. Just trying to split them up a little bit more so that we can get rid of as many non-contiguous areas as possible.
Well, we're doing a good job of eliminating the non-contiguous areas.
So if we move 593 into Wellington, they probably put Wellington a little bit over. And then I can't see the numbers now because we shifted, but some of those that we just, the westernmost, we just shifted to Picadome. To Stonewall from Picadome. What if we tied them with that group that's going to Clay's Mill? It'd still be a non-contiguous area, but they'd be going to a closer school than Picadome. And that would perhaps take care of some of that, what we've done in Stonewall, 93 over capacity.
Areas like 589, 580.
Exactly. I don't know how many students are in there, but
You want to put 593 into Wellington?
just start with that and see what it does. And I don't know how many students.
Why would we
are in that.
send kids to a further school when we got a plan where they could get closer?
I'm sorry?
So you're wanting to send the kids who just moved into Clay's Mill or into Stonewall to Clay's Mill now?
Because Stonewall's now way overcrowded. It's 93 students over.
I mean, I guess
We can't move that.
We send that at Rosa Park.
What I'm saying is I didn't accept anything. What I'm saying is that if they're not going to be moved farther away, they're going to be closer than they are going to Picadome currently.
But there's still traffic. I mean, as a
Why
parent,
can't we go up here and move some from the top end up to Place Mill?
That's what
I guess it's like
a
a parent, you're still going to, they're still going to have a 25-minute commute. I don't live on that side of town, but you're just making your child switch schools, and you're not really alleviating much of the commute.
Travel from down Clay's Mill to Stonewall would be, I would think, easier than getting over to Picadome from that area. I mean, just because it's
But can't we go to the top end of Stonewall and pull it that way where it's actually closer?
yeah.
Pull that into Clay's Mill?
Right,
I
Sure.
think that makes more sense than going back and split down.
right. And maybe move some of these, the Clays Mill area down here into Stonewall and pull in more of the other area up into Clays Mill. Shifted it from the top.
Why are we not shifting any of these kids into Garden Springs? If Garden Springs is at like 50% capacity, why are we not moving any kids
It's
into
not at 50 anymore because we changed that back. We haven't addressed that.
Yeah, we're at 80.
Back up to 80%.
So it's at 76%
But we still haven't given
capacity?
up on
Still has room.
But it still has room.
Yeah, there's still something.
So why don't we go to the top and kind of shift from the top and then come back and then shift these kids that are at the bottom back into Stonewall? Why are we going from the bottom and moving these kids from the bottom past schools? I mean, I'm confused.
Why don't
as
we,
the process
while
was
we're
working.
just kind of thinking, why don't we see what we took the green area that's Clay's Mill right now, that's 580 and 81, 88, put it in Garden Springs. See what happens.
Do we know how many students are there?
Yeah.
We hear that before. In that Clays Mill area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but why would we move that area past Stonewall into Garden Springs? Why are we not moving some of the kids that are in Stonewall or at the top part into Garden Springs so that we can move them directly into Stonewall? Like what? They already have a 25-minute commute. Why are we moving them and giving them a 25-minute commute? We're not helping them if that's what we're doing. We might as well leave them where they're at and not disrupt anything. Like leave them if they're non-contiguous, then we're going to make them non-contiguous. Leave them where they're at.
I agree. And I want to piggyback on what Bryce said earlier, that using the model that Scott put together for us would give us a lot of hints, clues, and ideas on how to address and the conversation the way it's going amongst all of us. It's kind of like we got the answers to the quiz right here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but we've already discussed that they don't want to move that many kids. So that the problem is to make it non-contiguous and to put everybody where God has put them, you have to move 7,000 plus children. And nobody wants to do that.
A lot.
So we're trying to do it the best we can without moving 7,000 children. So I understand that. But taking a non-contiguous area and making it a non-contiguous area but moving children makes no sense.
It makes sense that if your neighbor's going to Garden Springs and the guy across the street's going to Clay's Mill, if you can get them together, at least it creates a neighborhood. I mean, it doesn't eliminate both problems, but it might.
I'm not sure it even really matters at this point, though. If there's a basketball court there, those kids are playing at that basketball court after school, they're a neighborhood.
Yeah, but this time I go more like back to this, what he had come up with, where they're contiguous. Taking more of this up here and then putting these more together. This is what they're saying to look at.
Yeah, but that's the one that moves.
So if
How many children?
We're not doing all of it, just this one area.
Revolving around moving kids, do we then need to have the conversation about grandfathering the ones that are there now?
No, they left, just like over here, they left this
Because we're stuck
in
right
up to
now.
8. So it's not just
Yeah,
one area, not all the rest of them.
we've already said, Lester, as a group, that grandfathering is important to us, and it's going to be something that is going to help guide our work here. And when we get to the point where we're at, we may have some numbers that don't exactly work because of grandfathering, but we're going to be committed to doing that anyway. I'm encouraging all of us to just move forward with the longer range plan and understanding that grandfathering will ultimately take care of itself if we leave those kids in there currently. Karen?
To kind of speak to moving the kids from the top down, could we make Wellington Way a dividing line, since that's a pretty busy street, and move that 416, 468, 469 into Clay's Mill, open up the room by Stonewall, and then fill in from the bottom? How would people feel about that?
469 by itself, or 469 and 468?
469, 468, and 417.
417.
Second better.
I see it.
You're saying move on
And move it to where?
To Clay's Mill.
Clay's Mill. Let's try that, Scott.
All right.
And Aaron, is your thought then that
That would open up.
579, 80, 81, and 88 would then go to Stonewall?
And, you know, we now have room in Picadone because we pulled all those kids from Picadone. So there's another place we can move at the top.
I guess Stonewall to 100%.
Yeah, but there's room in Picadone now because we pulled all those kids from the bottom out of Picadone.
Right, but that doesn't solve the busing of kids past Stonewall.
Right.
Picadome's area could come out towards Clay's Mill, and Clay's Mill could be extended farther out to the Stonewall area.
Could we take this area from Wellington to Clay's Mill?
I think that would be good. That was what was in that computer-generated model, I believe.
It's also Target.
That's Target?
Meyer.
It's
Yeah,
Target,
there's no
Myers,
kids in there.
Joseph.
There's no kids in there?
There's no kids in 418.
72 students in 478.
477 and 478 are somewhat walkers too well.
Yeah, that's
And
You can change them, but that's what you're getting is walkers.
And it wouldn't make sense to do that.
Yeah, that's right across the.
Yeah, right out of the street. I agree.
Scott, how many kids are in 579, 580, 581, 588, that green non-contiguous area?
There's 95 students.
And they go. What would that do to Stonewall? How much? What would the percent be in Stonewall?
If put them that many students.
Right now,
They're right at it right now.
we're right where we want to be
Yeah.
with Stonewall.
Yeah, right now, both Wellington and Stonewall are at 100%. You might want to refine it slightly, but that's the best that you're going to do, generally speaking, in terms of getting kids into Wellington. And don't.
We got a lot of room in Picadome to play with, too.
Yeah.
But you don't want these people going to pick
Right.
up.
So maybe we can look at that part of the map. I agree.
Maybe we could zoom back out.
Can we look at the Clays Mill Picadome area a little bit, just to see if there's anything that could easily move there?
Which one?
The Clays Mill Picadome kind of area right there, because our Picadome number is really low, so if we can adjust that, that might help us adjust back down south.
I just don't think there's anywhere we can go with Clay's Mill down south, unless we go.
We can move some of these.
What road is 470 and 471 on? That's
Okay. Well, the park.
it's rural. It's down in the Stonewall area.
Want to go back to the Stonewall area?
It's on one of the outer sides of it. The 470 and 471. What's that road that that's by?
It's the south side of Wellington.
Wellington Way.
Yeah.
Over the road of our red line.
That wouldn't make sense for it to play a mill.
It doesn't to me.
Well, I didn't know if there was a big street there, or if they were mostly walkers.
No, there's kind of like a creek there, so that area you see on the south side of Wellington Way can't easily walk to Stonewall, even though Stonewall's right at the edge of that area. 471 might be able to walk to Stonewall, 470 cannot. That's the way the street connects.
42 students within these two study areas.
How many?
42.
That would probably allow us to move one more study area from the south side of Man of War into Stonewall if we do that.
You know, right where we are, we're in pretty good shape, except for Picadome. You know, assuming we, you know, as we decided to leave the Rosa Parks thing alone, and ACE, we decided to stay with the changes that we made. We're really looking at Picadome and maybe Sandersville because of what we're thinking the projections might be. And they don't make sense together. So, but I think we're getting close.
Chamberlain now is a little over capacity. Could we take one along the edge and put that into Picadome?
Which study area, Aaron?
331.
330, oh yeah.
You want to try that?
I think, Bob, isn't that a walkable distance?
I think it's got
Yeah.
walkers. Those are walkers that came from there. 380, on the other hand, is not. You're putting 380 in Garden Spring.
We're talking about putting
Well, we're going to get on.
Yeah, we're just looking at, we're so far under it.
Well, we could,
You can still put 380.
what is, we've also got the schools between the railroad track and Nicholasville Road that we could put into Picadome and Clays Mill. I mean, that's not schools, but the students. Between the railroad tracks and Nicholasville Road, they could go into both Picadome and Clays Mill.
319 and 328. Like that area.
Yes, 335.
You guys?
That's a big boundary.
That would work, and then we could alleviate a little bit from Cassidy's overcrowding into Glendover.
You want to go down to 356?
Yeah.
Yes, let's try that, please.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Well, that improves Picadome, but not to what I would consider an acceptable dome.
No. Oh, no.
Ashland's a little over it, changes to, we could probably relieve a little bit.
There's these two areas, 326 and 317.
Harrison's already under.
Yeah.
You know, that Ashland idea is not that bad an idea.
304 or something down in that area.
Is that walkable to Ashland, though?
No.
I wouldn't think so.
No, across the upper street.
Yeah. 304, right?
Could there be any kids?
Where is that?
So 281 and 304?
They dropped it.
There's a lot of kids around there.
They look good in theory.
They're 20-year-old guys.
Actually, hold on, can you go back? That's kind of my brain was. What if you moved 326 to Picadome and then 211 into Harrison, because Meadowthorpe is a little bit over, and so that might even out your numbers a little bit. How many are in 320?
6 has 57 students. 1128.
That might work.
Could we do that, please?
Where are you going to put it?
326 to Picadome, and then 211 to Harrison.
Yep. And we do have a solid problem for that little down there.
Relieve Meadowthorpe. Harrison's at still 80%. Picadome's at 65.
What about 321? I was thinking into, we could do that to Harrison or to Picadome, but that whole area, 321, 22, 23, 24, and 25.
322, 322 and up have a lot more kids. 321
There's a lot of students in there.
So I'm thinking, could you divide that and do like 321 and 322 to Harrison, and then 323, 24, and 25 to Picadone?
Yeah, but then what would be James Lane Allen?
Is that a neighborhood?
They're at 105.
What
How many does that take?
Darn.
Oh, we said it would only be nine. What would that do?
There's of 110 students in these two study areas.
Not a neighborhood?
Well, maybe only 322 or so.
There's over 220 students in these 5 study areas.
Ooh. A lot of kids. Wow. How many are in 325?
23.
We want to try to move that into Picadone and relieve the James Lane Allen.
Now, but it's 325 in walking distance, like 331 though?
No.
No?
Let's try it.
Mason Casey Road is the one in between 325 and 220.
Okay.
So people won't cross Mason.
So try it.
Scott, let's move to 325, please.
Picadone?
Please.
Everybody, don't forget, we will have these projected numbers in a week. So some of the areas that are going to change more significantly, we need to be thinking about as we move forward.
Can we
And then
move 321 into
No, that's
Harrison?
walking. Oh,
20 to Harris?
we
321 to Harrison.
Harris, we whatever we want.
And then you said it was 322 that was packed with kids?
At 308.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it home. Take it down. Put down steps to the demolish. You would take them to 80%. Are you thinking switch 350 out, Scott, and put 321 and 322 in?
That's what I was thinking. But there's, I don't know if it's going to work. There's 36 and 15. You
So
check
put
it.
350 James Lane Allen, and then 321 and 322 in Picadone.
I'm paying attention.
I have 30 people upstairs.
You just leave James Lane
Yeah.
Get over to 80.
I would just leave 350 where it was.
All of those streets coming out of Harrison Road, and all those.
What about 210 right there in Cardinal Valley? Those are Sales Road, but just kind of sticking out there. It's over a little bit.
I think so as well. 350 and 332 that we just moved. I think those should be. I would think we're Picadone.
Then you just take your sales into the house.
Or guard.
Okay, I can't really hear what you got to do.
Yeah. How many students are in 210, Scott? 34, right?
34.
Can we put them in Harrison, please?
Are we still okay with these, the 322, 321, and 332 and 350?
I think 332 and 350 should go. Pick a dome.
Back and pick a dome.
What will they do to James Lane Allen?
They'll put them
Well,
both.
they do.
Yeah, they were both good when we had them like that. Where's the parts that So we got Pickadome at 90, James Lane at 80.
What are we going to do about that pool area at the very bottom on the county line? Is it still there? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Can we go back to that little area of Place Mill? We got it all out there by itself. They're passing through two other school areas.
Well, they're passing two schools, and they're both Stonewall and Wellington.
We need Wellington to be a double wide.
I mean, there's other schools that we've left that's like a little bit higher. I don't think that's no more.
Well,
Or is that just much higher than a little?
there's three, how many students
Why
are
was
there?
that? Why was that?
95?
100.
Why would you not put them in Garden Springs?
That's what I was.
Or at least put them in the Garden Springs.
They were in Garden Springs 25 years ago, and they were put in Pikesville. They never complained about it. Really?
But let me ask this question. Clay's Mill is at 86 right now, 86%. And you've got Garden Springs at 79, 80%. Why couldn't you move these into Garden Springs, make it all contiguous, and you'll be somewhat less capacity at Clay's Mill?
Well, do we want to move kids just because it'll make it a neater map? I mean, if neither of them are over capacity,
Yeah.
we want to move people who are not upset with their current school just to make it neater.
No.
That, of course, is a good point.
I mean, if we're not going to give them a closer school, I would leave them exactly where they are.
I agree.
Well, I was thinking that it might save on transportation costs.
And grandfathering, since we pretty much agree with that, they could stay where they are until they're done with school. Just be new kids coming into the system.
Well, I mean, if you look at transportation, I mean, if they're living on Clays Mill Road, you go to Clays Mill Elementary, I mean, it's a pretty straight shoot up there.
Right.
Yeah.
You have
Okay. No, I don't have an
Hey, I was
objection.
going to say, they live on Clays Mill and they go to Clays Mill. It's literally a straight shot. There can't be that much transportation cost.
And the neighborhood seems happy with that. Yeah, that's good. Good for me.
this. What about the feeder pattern in that area? Is very important. Whether I was just making the comment that ultimately the feeder pattern could be very important in this area. Currently, everything southwest of Manowar and west of Clays Mill goes to Beaumont and Dunbar. But the earlier draft proposals, I think, had most of that area going to Jesse Clark and Lafayette. Jesse Clark is certainly closer than Beaumont. So
So we leave it.
Read this one?
Yeah, so we leave it. I'm good. Well,
My only is the new school east of the I-75.
We're at 100%.
do we want to take a real quick look moving eastward? You know, leave our work that we've done alone and then move eastward. Take a look at, our concern is this has got us at 108% at Sandersville, and based on our earlier conversation, that could grow significantly, fairly quickly, even based on the projections we'll have in a week. Do we want to anticipate a little bit of that and see if we can make?
What's that?
Well, the new school is 68%.
The other new school.
Yeah.
It's only at 68%.
But it's not really over there.
Yeah.
Oh,
You got
Yeah.
those little kids right from Spur Road. You go right over there.
Russell Cave's got some.
Well, I'm good with leaving it alone.
So I'm thinking maybe we should leave it as is until next week when we have maybe the projected numbers. So is it that east side where we're going to see the most changes?
Probably. I mean, that's what they both said.
No, I wouldn't think that we would spend half an hour,
So our three experts have said that.
because I don't think we'd spend half an hour tonight
Right.
looking at that side of town when next week we're going to see it change significantly.
All right, here's what I'm going to propose. We've got about 30 minutes left. Let's put this away, at least based on our capacity numbers, and look at it through another set of eyes for any of our other guiding principles.
Make sure you save this scenario, Scott.
Absolutely.
Or we'll drive to California and send you down.
Everybody pretty comfortable with where we are? Yeah, as I said early in the evening, we're getting to the point where we're actually going to be giving folks in our community something to really talk about.
Yeah, one little change made last time on Chester Road. And took a little section of Summerfield, moved it into Yates instead of Liberty, and that's split that into a whole new neighborhood. And that's just the first street in there.
Let's take a look at it. Yates right now, we're at 75%.
It took one little street and development, Summerfield, and put it over to Yates.
I can't see what that number says.
It's only 11 streets there now.
What happened to it?
But it's a whole new development that's all one neighborhood, and wouldn't be any point to take one street out of it. Just hadn't been built yet. It's right by the new high school.
So you're proposing that we put it back at Liberty? What number?
Just for right now. I mean,
Yeah, for the moment, I'm good with that. What's the study number?
I'm not here.
Yeah, 113D, Scott, back to Liberty. See what that does to Yates, though.
I think there's only 11 streets there.
But they're looking last year's number right from there.
Yeah. But you don't want to split that neighborhood up from the start. One street.
15 students. Back to Liberty. Yeah.
I wanted 113B back in the That's the first street in this whole neighborhood. built. There has to be something.
Can you get us those capacity numbers back, Scott,
And
after the change? So that drops us down to 45 at Yates. No, I'm sorry, 72.
There's only 15 students.
Yeah, 72, and Liberty then goes to right over, barely over.
I'm just looking down the road if that's all one there.
If it's all one neighborhood, it makes more sense than to move it over to Yates where that's underpopulated as opposed to Liberty.
You got an apartment
Well,
complex.
you'd have to move the whole neighborhood.
Right, so I'm asking how many are in the neighborhood. I mean,
There's going to be another 2,000 houses built here.
okay, but Liberty's already over and Yates is already under. Does it make more sense to at least go ahead and use where we got some space, even if it's going to be a lot?
Well, I mean, we're trying not to divide the neighborhood. I mean, you want to take 15 students.
Right.
No,
Let's move the whole neighborhood.
not just that area, but the other neighborhoods you were concerned about, put them all in Yates. So the
That's where
neighborhoods
we got space. If Liberty's already full, you're saying there's going to be a lot of
Liberty's right on the back edge of that neighborhood.
What neighborhood is that?
It's Tuscany and some, it's not been built yet.
So that's just what I'm asking. If it's not even been built yet, we're already 100% at Liberty, and we got room at Yates, then that's something we need to look at.
Where the new construction is going to be, though, would be closer to Liberty.
Right.
So it might make more sense to move it to Yates. Just move that whole, keep the neighborhood intact,
Right.
as Mike is suggesting.
Well, there
Bob,
might
can
be
you
some
scroll
places
down just so we can see where
but
Yates
I would
Pool
take
is?
one street out of it.
Right.
Right now. You end up with
Well, they can't go to Liberty anyway, because Liberty is, yeah.
Thank you.
Liberty's sitting in 105.
You think so?
No, I think it does make them different in the age, because otherwise Liberty is going to, it's explode.
If they take the back way out, they can just hit Winchester Road. They're basically two turns.
I have up here in the blue is the potential.
Is what? What's the blue?
Residential development.
It should go to Yates, then it seems, because Liberty's not, there's already no room for it at Liberty.
And neither one is within walking distance.
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
What do we want to do with 13B? Do we want to keep it where it is or move it back?
You put the numbers back up, the study area numbers.
13B, yeah.
Take 113B and the 4 114s and put that whole area in Yates. I know there's no students yet in the 114s, but that's where the development's going to be currently.
A lot of the area is going to be the new high school.
Yeah.
The high school's 114A.
So that keeps Liberty right at 100%. And Yates is 75 now.
67 students and 122.
Would that be a good one to move into Yates?
I mean, I'm happy to leave some room in Yates if that's going to be a growing neighborhood.
Well, it's Liberty that's going to need the room, it sounds like, doesn't it? From what I'm listening to.
All that blue area is happening now.
What about 104? Right now, there's only 25 students. Is that right?
Yeah.
And they're walkers to Yates, right?
If they would walk to Yates, yeah.
But doesn't that make sense?
Yes.
1048?
Yes.
Yes, please. So now we're at 80%.
What about 122 to Yates also?
Well, 22 is right on Liberty Road, but it's also a straight shot down Fortune.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to get to.
To get the Yates.
It's a lot easier to get to Liberty. All I want to do is 113.
You opened up a can.
Never mind.
Yeah, is 123 and 122 a neighborhood?
Yes, that's East Point.
The streets connect. Yeah, maybe Scott has a neighborhood map that he could show whether or not.
You don't want to split those two.
Eastwood.
You don't want to split that.
Let them put it back.
It's right by the school, and they can see the school.
So 122 might just need to go back to Liberty.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Is 114B and D also part of that development?
No. a different development.
There's no street.
Right. Is it going to be part of custody?
It's all 114A in high school.
Almost.
The only, I mean, there's the whole Liberty area neighborhood, but Liberty right there in 122. So there's no neighborhood association in between the two of 121 or 122 or 123. Keeping a neighborhood together like this. And it does relieve Liberty for when the development starts coming in.
Well, 75 students.
Then a lot of that development will be on the new school, so I mean, that Liberty doesn't need as much probably as some of them. I think it's good like this.
At least as a starting point.
You okay with this?
Can we freeze this here?
I think that we should. I think this is where we stamp it. I'm looking all the way down. And, you know, again, if ACE and Rosa Parks are acceptable, and our consensus is that they are,
ACE could be affected by our projections.
yeah, ACE could be affected by that projections on either end, you know, the southern end or the east end. We have possibilities, but at least for today. Scott, this is the one.
Okay.
Committee, don't leave me hanging.
I like it.
Good with
I agree.
Pause point.
cards out.
All right, we have 15 minutes left. Do we want to ask Scott to give us some new numbers based on what we just froze?
Yeah.
I think we need to at least take a look at it before we get away tonight. And we know where we will start on Thursday. Scott, if you could get us the free and reduced numbers based on what we've got here.
And Alan, with that, as I've discussed before, can we look at the actual numbers as opposed to percentage? Because where you had the different capacities for the school, remember I broke it down and the numbers weren't as far apart as they looked by percentage. You broke it down by actual number of kids. Or does that matter to you?
It matters, I understand, but it's inconsistent with our process so far.
Okay.
So let's hang with the process that we've been using first, and then we'll get into some more nitty gritty.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Good.
Where are we?
This is what we have here. We have a free yes or no.
These are percent. Okay. This is what we want.
Well, what we moved, for example, Picadome. Picadome, 33 and 67. It's changed to 64 and 36.
Wait a second. Wait. What am I looking at here? These capacity numbers that are
Produced.
These are the percentage of free and reduced lunch. Yes means free or reduced. No is they're paid.
That was one on the right where we left off. That's please almost no change. Why not get looked at?
No, I think you said it wrong.
64% free and reduced. Yes column, free and reduced.
well, we're not looking at apples to apples.
Right.
The one on the right is current. The one on the left is at the end of today.
The one on the right is
What
what we
is
left
it?
off the last meeting, I
I
believe.
think it's
No, it says current. It says current.
This is current.
Yeah, it is in the packet, but it's not where we started today.
It's the current.
It's what is out in school today. Excuse me.
It says scenario A and B there, not current
Now
is
it's
different
current.
page. Let me change. Okay, it's good.
Well, here's what I want to see. I want to see what we just froze and what those free and reduced numbers are for each of the
And
schools.
that's on the left.
On the left.
Is that what we are? Which right?
Your left.
The left is what we've just ended with.
Okay.
The right is the current. So pick it
Why
up.
is free and reduced?
Yes. That's correct.
It flipped, basically.
Yeah. 67% paid, 36%.
Where's that?
Now, what are you looking at?
Picadome was now 64, on our projection, it's 64 to 30.
Yeah, 64 free and reduced, 36 paid.
No.
It flipped.
Almost the opposite.
Almost the opposite.
I apologize. I didn't realize I flipped them.
Well, speaking on flip, that's a change too, not just on the screen.
Sure is.
It looks like there are 8 schools that are in the, I don't know, using 80% as an extreme one way or the other. It looks like there are 8 schools that have 80% in one column or the other out of these elementary schools.
using 80% as the benchmark?
Yeah.
As the extreme benchmark?
Right.
Okay.
Breckenridge, Cardinal Valley.
This is really
Yeah, definitely.
okay. So this is what I'm looking at. Right.
3 of those schools have 90% or higher.
How many have been changed from where they were before? Because the current, so like Arlington is 93% free and reduced lunch now, and on the map.
Yes.
Okay, look,
And when you look at the scenario A and B that we both started working with the free and reduced lunch, and you compare that to the current and compare that to this, most of the schools stay the same. There are a few increases across 4 or 5 increases, and there are a couple of decreases. So when we come back as a committee and we say we're trying to work to balance SDS levels, they're not changing that significantly. Picadome is maybe an outlier. Booker T. Washington was one that actually increased. The current is 79%. I think they went up to 90. So unfortunately, those things are probably going to happen when we play with the study areas. I think we have remained true to that guiding principle. I think we've all kind of come to the realization that it's not going to be quite possible to balance our elementary schools with equal numbers of paid or not paid lunches.
And remember with Ron Station, we moved 1,000 students trying to get it to even out, and it only changed it 2 percentage points. Some areas you can't get it in clusters. Some you can, but some of you we couldn't because we tried.
And as an elementary principal and someone who has worked in high-performing schools and low-performing schools, high free and reduced lunch population, and not so much, I appreciate the work that's being done, but at the end of the day, sometimes we're not going to be able to alleviate, sometimes we're not going to be able to balance as much as we would maybe like to. I would like to, but I don't know that it's going to happen.
That may be somewhat true at the elementary level, so where neighborhoods are, but we're just looking at the numbers now. I'm not willing to give up at this point, tinkering at the margins to try to improve some of these distributions. I just think we kind of came at it from the capacity issue and removing these non-contiguous areas, and now we just requested to see what it looks like. I'm not willing to say that I'm happy with this as it is.
This is a good discussion. Hang on. We are not going to ask Scott to make any changes, anything here, but this is a good discussion to figure out where we are on our feelings about what these numbers are saying to us. And that's the conversation we'll have here, and I would like to carry over to where our starting point is on Thursday night before we begin to either tweak or not tweak based on some of these numbers.
Can I say one thing?
There.
Oh,
Julie,
sorry.
okay.
One of the things I was looking at was current socioeconomic status, and I completely agree about the outliers and the higher numbers, but one school that I looked at that changed from 59% to 84% was Breckenridge, and when I looked at that 59%, it really surprised me because I thought it was a higher school. Well, when I went and looked at the current website, it said they were actually 82%. So when you look at the current attendance areas, it showed 59%, but what is actually in the building is 82%. And I think we need to consider that when we start moving based on socioeconomic status is it may look pretty on paper, but is that what's going to be in the actual building? And so I think we need to think about that. And I'm not saying I disagree that we need to make decisions based on socioeconomic status, but that needs to be thought about. If we move a certain neighborhood, are those kids actually going to go to that school? So just something to think. That's just
don't disagree with that, but I'm not sure how we get to that.
Bob, can I ask?
I guess Scott can get us there.
I'm not saying he needs to pull anything. I'm just saying certain movements that we make aren't really going to have the impact that we want.
And you're giving, in the example of Breckenridge, you're basically showing that the percentage in the building on who goes there is different from what who lives there.
Right.
Right.
Well, another
Scott's
example
model
is my
address
school,
that.
Southern Elementary. We have 70% free reduced lunch, and on this chart it says we have 56%.
Right.
And some of the non-free lunch students opt to go elsewhere, whether it's private education or
programs.
Right.
other programs.
And that difference of 14% at one school or 26% at another, I think Scott can, a version of his model can, for this current school year, show when you change these kids, when you change where they live, if you make a couple assumptions about them, about the kids who are out of area staying where they are, and the kids who go to the neighborhood school moving, he can give you a guesstimate of what the new percentage in the building might be at a school like Breckenridge or Southern. Okay. Scott, did you hear that?
Yes, I did. It's correct. But you remember that it can only be done on current students.
Correct.
So the projected students or projected numbers, we won't be able to do that.
They will be better than just looking at their residents,
Yes.
the attendance area residents, yes.
Thank you, Julie. That was a good thought. Any other thing? This is our stopping point for tonight, but food for thought for the next 2 days.
I was going to say, I wonder if it would be a good idea to have a subcommittee maybe look at the maps as they are and look at some of the other guiding principles and maybe try to tweak it. But with us meeting twice a week, I don't know whether we find time to do that. But I'm thinking maybe a smaller group of us might work more effectively than the whole committee and bring it back to the committee.
Based on the entire set of guiding principles or anything in particular?
Well, you know, the socioeconomic status, of course, but then even the contiguous areas like, you know, I'm still not completely satisfied with leaving that area down on the county line, driving past schools to get to school. I mean, it seemed like it should be some moves that we could make to get that in, you know, into a closer school. But, you know, I was just saying that as a suggestion, maybe a smaller subcommittee.
You know, we talked about the socioeconomic thing. We've been meeting since July. We spent the first 8 meetings, and we moved kids everywhere. We tried with the Bryan Station, as you mentioned earlier, we moved 1,000. We moved almost 2,000 students and couldn't bring it up more than double-digit figures. We want to make it all follow the guiding principles. Unless we're committed to moving kids all around this city, it's going to be extremely difficult to make it all in every single school.
Other thoughts?
I think that's true, but I also think that we're sitting here and we have a very unique opportunity to fix a problem. There's going to be a problem today, and there's going to be a problem 10 years from now. And like, instead of worrying about what the schools look like now in terms of like the report card, like they said, we can take care of that with grandfathering. We need to worry about what they can look like 5 years from now, and we can fix some of those problems. We don't need to worry about what people think about where their kids go to school today. We need to think about where we can put kids and what we can do to fix those schools 5 years from now. And we have very passionate people that have been here, you know, for this particular process. They'll still be those same passionate people 5 years from now. You know, they're going to be passionate when their kids are in middle school, when their kids are in high school. They can rally to the school board, to the equity council, and they can fix some of these other problems that these schools seem to be having. That's not our job, to focus on those things. Our job is to try to get these school systems and to get some socioeconomic balance. And some of these schools can do that without having to bust all over the place. You see that just in the numbers with ACE and Breckenridge. They completely flipped. You can look right here with these numbers today. I won't get into all of that. But that was a 10-minute drive. That wasn't a 25-minute. That wasn't a 30-minute. There's other areas that we changed that were put in place 10 years ago for these very reasons that we have undone.
But the only thing, I see your point, I agree, but then you get into, that's where non-contiguous areas and then splitting up neighborhoods and things like that have to come in. I mean, to get better, sure, but I don't think it's something you possibly fix in this setting, in this environment, or any of this redistricting action.
I think right now it is. Like when you're doing something like this, where you are moving thousands of children, when you do have the opportunity to move neighborhoods and schools and buses and this is an area. This is the time that you can fix those things. There's data all over that shows when you take a large number of low socioeconomic children and put them all in one building, that you have problems. I had this discussion with a family last night, you know, because you have different problems at home. You have different issues elsewhere that you have to deal with. And even though that's not necessarily the goal here either, people, like, when I read these different things that people type in and they send in the notes, the letters, a lot of it is very contradicting. And I feel like what we really spent the first 8 meetings on was trying to make sure we didn't hurt a lot of feelings and that we didn't step on any toes. The only thing that we've stopped doing the last 3 meetings was that. And we started actually working on the map.
I have a question and a comment. I have a question and a comment. First question, I hadn't looked at the equity scorecard in a few days. So does it break down those socioeconomic students in terms of free and reduced when they attended those other schools that had lower percentages of free and reduced? What was their academic performance when we talk about closing cheating? Do we have that data in the district to determine if there were any changes over the past 10 years to those students who attended those particular schools where the free and reduced lunch was lower percentage-wise? Comment, there's, research and data on both sides, to be honest with this story, that supports both. That a school that is more homogeneous in terms of socioeconomic status does well compared to if they were in another type of school where it's different. So it's on both sides. We won't ever be able to win the argument as to who's right or who's wrong on what type of environment from my standpoint. It's my personal opinion. But I would like to know within the last 10 years where we have done redistricting before, and you've placed free and reduced students in those particular locations where they are in schools that have lower, what was the academic performance and achievement for them at that time? Because as I've said before, I don't think redistricting will fix any of that. It's kind of assuming that if you put minority students, free and reduced students in a location where there are with other white students, that means they're going to learn more or they're better off that way. That's not always the case. We have schools that show that that's not always the case. You have one right here in Fayette County in terms of there's a college in Woodson where you have minority students who do well. Not all are free and reduced lunch students as well. So that was my question. Do we have data on academic performance of those students who were moved into those locations for the reason of balances? What does it look like now? What did it look like? That would help us determine if that was an effective method or if we improve schools overall, even those that are low performing is where our efforts, which is not necessarily part of this committee, but I would mandate that we definitely enforce that with the Equity Council, that those schools that are low performing, they must have extra resources. That's what will fix this issue, the community inside the school and outside the school. And we keep saying this over and over again. This won't fix it. If it would be, then I'll close the doors of Community Action Council when it comes to certain low-income families. We can just redistrict and we're done.
Well, I don't believe that redistricting will fix it, but it will help it.
Can we also, is it possible to look at students who are districted to be bused to, say, a higher performing school from a lower income area, see how many of them go out of district to their closer schools?
Didn't you say, Malcolm, that a lot of them prefer to stay?
The survey we said because there are other barriers being closer to your neighborhood. There's a community network. When you talk about poverty, being in the area where you live is supportive to surviving. You don't have to drive across here if a child gets sick. It's just a lot of things that go in your workplace is closer to where you try to live, just for different reasons if you're on public transportation. So the majority of the folks wanted to stay close to their neighborhood. Now what didn't come out is their feelings about
academic achievement. Everybody wants their child to be in a successful place and be successful. So that's another issue to address, that people assume that the school system would do their job and teach their children. So that's a thing that was taken our assumption that was just made and assumed by our family. But as far as where they want to go, they didn't want to be bused all the way across town. Nobody, we've all mentioned, we want to stay closer to our neighborhoods. And that's a consensus. But they do want good students too, and we want that for them.
To answer,
so that's a different issue.
in answer to your question, the data is available.
Okay.
And I think everybody wants to stay close to home. Everybody wants to stay close to home, but you have a whole lot less argument about being bused far away if you're going to a better school.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I asked for the data on the kids who were being bused to a better school. How many of them are opting to go out of district to their neighborhood school instead of to the better school?
I think you're getting into trouble when you start talking about better school.
Better school, not better
I
school.
mean,
We can change the word, we just know what the
there are gaps in all. There are gaps in all.
That's right.
Scott, can we get data that will give us an idea of what the demographics of all the schools are based on the work that we've done and imprinted for Thursday night?
Yeah, I can do the similar to what I've done here, giving you the scenario with the breakdown. That's what you're asking. Yes, that's what I would get you done.
Can you do the adjusted version based on the kids going, some kids being out of area, going to different schools?
I don't know if I can get that by Thursday. That's a pretty quick turnaround, and that's a longer process.
Okay. But it's not tied in with the projection issues, right?
No, it's not tied in with projection issues.
I think that would just be good for everybody to have anyway.
Any other thoughts before we break for the night? None? Well, then I appreciate everybody's time and work. I think we're still making progress. Hey, everybody, Thursday, send you a reminder reports.
Oh, yes, please do. Give me one tomorrow and Thursday.
Hey, goodbye.
Thank you, guys.